All right, folks, it is May 14th, and all kinds of things are happening in the world, including the fact that tomorrow afternoon, Steve Rao will be having a talk on AI with John Chambers and other folks. I believe the Secretary of State, Elaine Marshall, may be there, as well as other people that are connected to the world of tech. So that is going on, and we're very much glad that that is going on with one of our colleagues. And all along those lines, I believe it's at 4 p.m. on tomorrow. So I know he's preparing for that and getting ready for that as well. And of course, there are a number of other things happening in the world. As a matter of fact, Biden is at a crossroads on Israel over military aid and civilian protection. That is what some people are saying, and all along those lines. So we'll see how folks feel about that and all in that kind of way, and how things continue in that discussion. But definitely, a lot of folks are trying to figure out the next move from the Biden administration in terms of military aid, both to Israel as well as continued aid to Ukraine and other places as well. And Israel tanks are pushing into Gaza's Rafah as displaced civilians are fleeing again. So it looks like Israeli tanks are moving deeper into Rafah. Palestinians say, as apparently it looks like 450,000 people have fled from that general area. And Putin will visit Xi, testing a no limits partnership. So Russian President Putin is to make a state visit to China this week. So that's something that'll be going on, and we'll see what goes on as the world is dealing with the various world conflicts, and see what they have to say when they meet with each other. And definitely, it looks like in a fall to an official state of visit, or official state event, I should say, those hit by October 7th led a torch dousing ceremony. So on Independence Day, many Israelis are asking what's to celebrate. And in Tel Aviv's Hostages Square, tens of thousands marked Independence Day with hope for freedom. So definitely it's looking like that is going on as well. So it's been 76 years of Israeli independence, and there's definitely things going on in that part of the world. The Georgia Parliament has approved a controversial foreign agent law defying the protests. So that's been going on for a while, and we've been talking about that to a limited degree, but we might get into more conversations to see what folks have to say about that. And the UK confirms it will build 6 new warships for the Royal Marines. So they're going to be building some new warships over there in that area. And it looks like the second Russian invasion is worse than the first, as the Kharkiv region evacuees are saying that, and all along those lines. And it looks like Kyiv says it is difficult to hold its ground, but definitely U.S. aid is reaching Ukraine as Russia continues their attacks near Kharkiv. So definitely there's a lot of battles going on in that way. And UK's Cameron slammed the appealing attack on a Gaza-bound AIDS convoys. So it looks like Israeli protesters attacked an AIDS truck destined for Gaza. So that is something that we're also seeing in the news. And there is apparently a White House who was condemning Israeli settlers' attack on that truck. And they were saying something about total outrage and all in that kind of way. And then there was another attack on a convoy that freed prisoners in France. It killed some guards, and a manhunt is on. At least 2 officers were killed in an ambush on a prison convoy that was going over there in France. And a manhunt was launched after 2 prison guards were killed and inmates escaped in that France ambush. And it looks like smoke from Canadian wildfires is reaching the U.S., and Minnesota is under an air quality alert. So wildfires in the British Columbia and Alberta could also impact Ontario's air quality as well, and definitely might be impacting some of the things happening here also. And it looks like the whistleblower who exposed the alleged war crimes in Afghanistan over there in Australia has been jailed. So definitely, it looks like he was jailed for leaking documents, and that was the gentleman by the name of David McBride. So he was sentenced to prison after exposing alleged Australian war crimes in Afghanistan. So we'll have to see if Shaquille or anybody else comes in that has some ideas around what's going on there. And in Pakistan, there is violent unrest over economic strife as that is erupted into Pakistan's Kashmir region. So it looks like it's being fueled by Pakistan's economic crisis. So they're in an economic crisis. And definitely it looks like violent protests are continuing in Pakistan, held at Kashmir against price hikes and all in that way. So it looks like that's going on. And of course, we got shakeups in the government, both in Russia and other parts of the world as well. And it looks like an American doctor is trapped in Gaza after the Rafah border closing. So that's something else we're seeing in the news. They're trapped in the Rafah. U.S. medical volunteers say they can't save lives and can't evacuate. So that is something that is also going on in that part of the world. And Biden has signed a bipartisan bill banning the imports of Russian uranium. So there are some bipartisan efforts that are going on as well. So that was signed into law and all in that space. And apparently, if you're like one of those folks that can go out on a yacht, you might have to watch out for animals as well, because it looks like a yacht was sunk after being ran by orcas in the Straits of Gibraltar. So definitely that is something else that was going on. So it looks like the orcas sink a sailing yacht, and definitely that's something going on. So apparently they're ramming boats over there. Maybe they don't want the boats in their neighborhood and all along those lines. So that's something I'm seeing. Let me get to some U.S. news as well. But before I get to the U.S. news, at least 14 were killed when a billboard fell, and that was actually in Mumbai. So at least 14 were killed as a billboard collapsed in Mumbai during thunderstorms and all in that space. And of course, we know a lot of folks are following the Trump trial, and Michael Cohen will continue testifying. So that's something else that is still going on. So he's going to be coming back to the courts to face cross-examination. And I haven't been watching the trials close enough to see how he did in the first part of the trial, but hopefully some folks will come on that can tell me how it went and if they watched any of the news reports, because I know that the hearings or the case is closed, but sometimes there is analysis on other networks and other folks as well. So it'll be definitely interesting to see what folks have to say. And Antonio Blinken is arriving in Kiev to reassure the Ukrainians as Russia, like I said earlier, is ramping up their offense. So Blinken makes an unannounced diplomatic trip to Ukraine after Congress approved that $60 billion in military aid. And it looks like Trump allies are flocking to the Manhattan courthouse to show support and curry favor with the former president. So definitely it looks like folks are going there to let him know that they are in support of what he is going through, and doesn't and it'll be interesting what's going on in that way. And apparently Biden doesn't believe the polls, because apparently Biden is in denial about polls showing him trailing Trump. So even though Trump is apparently leading in 5 key states, as apparently both the young and a lot of the non-white voters are expressing severe discontent with Biden. But like I said, he, like Rick Rosner and others, isn't always thinking that the polls are accurate and all in that kind of way. So definitely it'll be interesting to see what they've got to say and anybody else has to say as well. And the collapsed Francis Scott Key Bridge was detonated to help free the ship from the port of Baltimore. So the section of Baltimore's Francis Scott Key Bridge has been demolished. So it looks like that is helping a stuck ship get free. So they went ahead and just got rid of that. And, they've been having some other incidents as well. And it looks like Maryland, West Virginia, and Nebraska are voting in today's primaries. And definitely we'll see what goes on in those spaces. I want to say that there might be some Republican elections going on right here in North Carolina, but you have to be I think it's only for the Republican Party, if I am remembering correctly, because I don't think it's any open seats that are in that particular election and all along those lines. And it looks like South Dakota Governor Kristi Noem has been banned from visiting the land of 2 additional tribes. So she was banned from reservations after her drug cartel remarks and all along those lines. So definitely it'll be interesting to see what goes on in that space. And last but not least, because I know we have some fans of some non-fans, I should say, of crypto, but it looks like the U.S. has ordered a Chinese-backed crypto miner to sell their land near a nuclear missile base. So they might have got some land, might have bought some land, and all in that space. But it'll be interesting to see what goes on in that way. And like I said, the North Carolina Republican congressional runoff is showing Trump's sway in the GOP state politics. I think Brad Knox is doing quite well, and I think the other candidate had actually dropped out all along those lines. But like I said, to bring in some of my other folks that are here with me, see what they've got to say. I've got Kim Calhoun with me, and I've got, of course, Sasha Starr here as well, and Rick Rosner, and of course, we've got Jatobi here also. But a lot of things are going on in the world and everything. So, Kim, I don't know if there's any particular things you had on in your mind, and all along those lines, I did have to just teasingly say, I don't know what we keep doing, that the orcas keep wanting to ram our boats or yachts and everything when we go out there, but apparently they're not too pleased with us and all along those lines. But any thoughts about these various world issues that are going on that are probably much more serious than that?
Well, it sounds like nature's finally on to us, and good for them. I think they're trying to tell us to back off a little bit or get our act together. Mother Nature's not going to put up with it much longer, whether it's going to be forest fires that burn the whole earth, or a flood, or earthquakes, or all of the above, tornadoes, everything. But we're not doing our job at all. And these wars, come on. Mother Nature must be wreathing by now with the bombing and the killing of all living things just to target a bunch of terrorists. But, I also want to point out something to France. You got gun problems too. I'm not happy about what happened, but let's talk real here. Okay. You got gun problems too. Look what just happened.
Okay.
And we've also just experienced, I don't know if unfortunately, I flew one of the Boeing 737 Maxes, but another whistleblower suspiciously died for Boeing. So, what is going on? And you have a governor who says something so horrifically bad about the people of her state that they're banning her from their land. Let's take a reality check here and just address what is the real problem. And I think it's the real problem that the humans of this race, or not even this race, of this society and generation, lack respect, complete respect. That's what
I've got good news. I read an article yesterday that we're making fewer and fewer babies, which can help us with things like climate change. Just a year ago, population experts were saying that the population would peak in the year 2100 at 11 billion. But now the number of babies we're pumping out has fallen so much that the same experts are saying that humanity will reach a population peak of just 9.5 billion in the year 2061. And they say that reduction in anticipated population may be enough to clean up like 25% of the effects of climate change, because fewer people means fewer people burning energy.
Well, we're also killing off everyone, and the only people left are the children who they force people to not have abortions, to have babies, and they track them if Trump's in office. So, yeah, I think you're right. Where's the love? There is no more, right? There is no more respect. Everybody's texting their phones. Phones can't have babies, people.
Phones and social media make people more selfish, which makes it harder for them to couple up. Because when everybody's kind of an a-hole, a-holes kind of repel each other. And Then you can't
Yeah,
make.
the only women that are going to have babies are the ones who get raped and are forced to have them. Or, maybe who knows, they'll make the AI do artificial insemination on young girls. I
You
don't
know,
know. I mean, it's a disgusting, despicable state that we're in. And all of these wars need to end. Everything just needs to come to a screeching halt. Trump's trial, good God, just throw the man in jail.
Yeah,
That's all
speaking
you're
of that
going to
trial,
do
that's what I was
anyway.
going to ask
Just
you. Did
throw him in
anybody?
jail.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask you. Did anybody watch? Because I know, as Sasha pointed out, you can't really watch, but you can hear the reports afterwards and everything. And I've not really been hearing or getting an understanding of what Michael Cohen has been saying because I wasn't following it that closely. So, what is the word on what Michael Cohen is saying, and will it be enough to put him?
So the thing that I found most interesting is that for them to get a guilty verdict, they have to establish that Trump paid the hush money specifically to help him in the election. If there's any other reason along with that, then they can argue, the defense can argue then that. Anyway, Michael Cohen yesterday on the stand said that when, asked about, what'll Melania think if she finds out about this? Trump's like, I'm a hot commodity. If Melania leaves, I'll be able to get, wife number 4 within weeks.
Yeah, that's Trump. Okay, people. So there you go. He doesn't really care about you either. All he cares about is becoming president for his own personal gains. And I think Sasha would agree to that. Go ahead, Sasha.
I would disagree with Rick on one point. It's irrelevant whether to convict Trump, it's irrelevant whether he did hush money payment because of fear of Melania or because he wanted to get rid of this Stormy Daniels issue, especially when Hollywood tapes were released. But that doesn't make any sense one way or another. What does make sense, only one thing, that he masterminded together with his accountant and Michael Cohen the scheme to pay Stormy Daniels and to show it that it was a payment of legal fees. That's the only one issue on which Trump can be convicted. He may have sex with Stormy Daniels every half an hour. He could have do anything, whatever he wanted. It doesn't lead to conviction. But if it will be proven beyond a reasonable doubt, at least in minds of these 12 jurors, that the records were falsified to achieve certain goals, that can lead to his conviction.
Just really quickly along those same lines. Hold on a second, Rick.
Did he lie to the IRS about the money too?
Yeah.
To me, that should be a huge federal offense. This whole thing about lying about your money and how it was spent, misuse of appropriated funds needs to be addressed, not whether he had sex or not. I'm sick of all of the smoke screens.
There's an interesting. Let me say a thing. There's an interesting trend with sexual predators and the reduced number of babies we're making. When you look at big time sexual predators, Trump has been accused of raping or sexually harassing or assaulting 26 women. Trump's 77, Cosby's 80 something, 80 women. Harvey Weinstein's almost 80, 87 women. That like big time sexual predation seems to tend to be among like old school creeps, like elderly guys who are now elderly, and then younger people, have found things to do besides like be sexual predators, play video games, look at naked ladies online instead of throwing.
Rick, hold on a second, because yesterday on our show, or on the show that I do, the radio show, and all along those lines, which is one of our pod TV shows, I actually had a young lady that was on, a little bit younger than myself, in her mid-50s and everything, part of the Mormon church and all along those lines, who was literally excommunicated from the church because of some of her affairs and some of the other things that were going on in her life, and she admits having the affairs. But we were talking about that. There are still, and I think Jacoby would even agree with this because he spends some time, just like I do, with people that are on the college universities. There are still a number of young people that are getting involved in date rape and that whole kind of stuff that we are saying that the older folks are doing. So I don't think we can just lay it on the people that are in their 80s. There are some young people that are also doing some of that as well.
Sure, I mean, there will always be sexual predators, but I'm hoping that the trend of people having less sex in general also applies to less sexual predation in general.
Well, sexual predation deals with power more so than anything. So it's a power dynamic where, you know, the sex really isn't for the satisfaction. It's dominating another person. So even though they're having less sex, it's still, I mean, you're still going to have the same sexual predators because it's seen as a dominant thing. The reason that the sex stuff came up with the Trump trial is to prove Trump wrong or that he lied, because Trump kept going out saying that, hey, I did not have sex. I did not have sex with her. And he repeated that on interviews. He's done that multiple times before the trial. And so to put her on record, yeah, the salacious details weren't necessary, but that was just another thing in the whole, you know, the whole trial is just going to boil down to a he said, she said, or he said, he said.
Though it should just be, did he write the check? What was the check
That's what I'm saying.
for? Was
That's
it
what I'm saying.
misuse
It's
of
got to be
appropriated funds?
it's a he said trial. It goes between Cohen and Trump. The whole idea is who is more believable at this moment. Does the buck stop with Cohen or does the buck stop with Trump?
But
Because
I think Cohen's testimony is actually helping Trump, to be honest.
No, it's not.
I think it is.
It's not at all, because the reason it's not is because everything was already laid out. The only thing that Cohen has to testify to, which is what he's doing, is actually a link between, well, I told Trump this. Everything else was already laid out. That's why they took so long and everything. They already pointed out the amount of money. They already pointed out, yes, that he had sex, that the actual affair happened. They already pointed out every single thing. And the only other person that can actually that would actually help as well would be Alan Weisselberg. But Alan Weisselberg is tied up and he's not coming out of Rikers right now because evidently he's being uncooperative everywhere else. But but Cohen has done a good job so far. We have to see what happens on the cross, because listening to what he's already gone through, because they pressed him on a few things, but this is still just the prosecution trying to establish everything that we've laid out right now. He's going to corroborate. He doesn't have to agree to. The only thing that they need Cohen for is, hey, like I said, that link that Trump knew and Trump willingly did it.
Hey,
So
there's something else that,
let me just ask this really interesting question, because it's always about asking the right question one day. What in all of this trial, what evidence would find him innocent?
I mean, again,
Closing statement.
what
What evidence would find him innocent?
That Trump didn't really know what people were doing on his behalf. And
that would be the only thing.
That didn't help Martha Stewart. Next.
But honestly, that is
Sasha and I disagree, but I've heard lawyers say that if the defense can prove that it's not illegal to pay somebody to keep quiet, and if the defense can establish reasonable doubt that he was doing it for something besides to help him win the election, then it's not now. But I don't know. I'm not a lawyer.
So
but
the falsifying of business records to cover up a campaign finance violation is what he's on trial for.
yeah.
And if they prove that Trump willingly falsified business records to cover up this whole to do the hush money, to protect him from the or protect his election side of stuff, that's the whole trial in a nutshell. Hence the reason why it boiled down to
was he protecting himself for the election, for his campaign? Is that the fraud? Or But
Yes.
what would protect him from being accused of fraud? Would it be because he was protecting his wife and family from knowing about it?
I mean, I guess the
As far as
question
wife
would
and
be
family,
kind of what
we
you
we
alluded
already
to earlier.
established
A
that.
lot of people in fraud cases, the part of their defense is that they didn't know that the fraud was taking place. I mean, I watch enough crime dramas to know that that's part of the defense
But
for
that's
a
BS. He
proper-
knew.
He
He
didn't.
knew.
Yes. The thing is, he doesn't care about the wife and family as much because this is not his first wife. This is not even his second wife. And he cheated on this wife because that's already established. So it's not that, oh, I don't want my wife to find out. No, he already stated that, that this is about the election and so on and so forth. So
We need to make a first
It-
wife cheated on club. Hillary Clinton. I mean,
Yeah,
come
there's
on.
gonna be a whole lot of them.
It's going to be ridiculous.
You probably could go way back. There probably some of those. Matter of fact, you can go back to even though I hate to bring it up because it deals with slavery, but you can go back to Thomas Jefferson. You go back to a number of folks that were.
But I mean, the living.
But there's another question to ask, which is what will result in a mistrial? And
that's what I'm looking for. What
so what could result in a mistrial is that somebody on the jury is a Trump supporter who can't be who believes this is unfair prosecution.
Right.
And
so a mistrial in his favor would be an anti-Trump person who finds him 100% guilty, and you can't bend them either. So, I mean,
yeah, but I think
the mistrial is only saving grace, but there's got to be something. If I always look for their side to win before I go to court, I always look at the opposition. What will give them the winning hand? And that's what they need to look for.
There are two options that they're going for, which Rick has already stated one earlier about, I mean, it's not, so the jury's not bending. It has to be all guilty or all not guilty. Because even in the middle,
unanimous.
Yeah, so it has to be unanimous.
And I don't see that happening. But I do have a question for y'all based on the. Hold a second, Jacoby. I do have a question.
I want to hear what Jacoby has to say, though. Go ahead.
But Rick has already stated the one where, about, one of the options. But the other option, that is the fact that somebody has to say, because there's some technicality that they're going to try and push, especially on appeal. Because one of the judges, they're going to try and push the idea that the judge was a political hack, which he's not. They're going to try and push that what Stormy Daniels said in a tweet after she testified what goes against, and that should be a mistrial because they already pushed that, and that's going to be something on appeal. So these are, I mean, right now it's going to go to its conclusion, and that conclusion, like I said, it just boils down to a he said. Who do you believe, Trump or Cohen?
Yeah, but along those same lines, and this is where I was going, and I'd love to hear Sasha's thoughts around this, is we're talking about the Trump election and these various trials because there are a number of them going on, and sometimes he gets to campaign, sometimes he doesn't get to campaign, depending on what's going on. Even though I do think that on the 17th, which I believe is Friday, he'll get to go to his son's graduation and everything. But my question I've got to ask everybody is, there are two movements that are going on, and I'm concerned that these movements could actually lead to a Trump victory. And I was just wondering y'all's thought about this because there is a very strong amount of people. I mean, what he had like say 80,000 at some event in New York and New Jersey that came to see him speak and everything. So there's a strong amount of pro-Trump people that are out there. We might not want to think that there are as many as there are, but there are a bunch of Trump people out there, and then there are a number of what is called the sit on the hands gang, or at least that's what I'm calling them and everything, because there are a number of people that are doing protest votes that don't want to vote at all. So I am concerned that this might actually lead to a Trump victory. I just want y'all's take on that because there's a whole lot of folks that are willing to sit on their hands because they're pissed at Biden over one issue or another.
Well, I mean, that was the case in 2016, that a bunch of people were pissed at Hillary Clinton, that when Comey reopened the investigation, the FBI investigation into Hillary's emails 11 days before the election, because Huma Abedin's husband was a sexual predator who was using her machine to sext underage kids, then that whole thing, both candidates were under investigation by the FBI, but people used political pressure or political bias to hide the FBI investigation into Trump in 2016. So anyway, you had a bunch of people, you got two candidates with large negatives, makes it unpredictable.
It's very unpredictable. Sasha, what's your take on this and everything? Because I know you said several times that you are not a fan of Trump, but you've also lately been kind of leaning to the possibility that he, like I just alluded to, could possibly win. So, and that could have some impact even on parts of the world that you're very much concerned about, which is Ukraine and Israel. But what's your take on both the sit on the hand gang as well as the strong amount of Trump supporters that are out there?
Okay, Mark, I'll tell you this. The only way Trump would for sure lose election if he would be convicted before the election at some point. And for practical reasons, even from purely math reasons, you need 12-0 rate of jurors to convict him. And I don't believe that with all the evidence there and Michael Cohen and Stormy Daniels' testimonies and so on, I just don't believe in this number 12-0. It's going to be 11-1. It could be 6-6, whatever number it is, but it's not enough to convict. So he is not going to be convicted before as a result of this trial. So it will be mistrial. And if it's mistrial, it will be tried again, sometimes in the distant future. 3 years from now, 7 years from now, never probably. And so therefore, it's not going to affect Trump's chances to win the election. Now, even if he will be convicted, so there will be immediate appeal. That appeal, again, is not going to be heard before the election. So it's not going to affect the election in any way, whether it's mistrial or he loses and appeals. It's not going to do anything. So in the meantime, what's happening here is that Biden, with his reckless foreign policies, he's alienating just a huge number of people, trying to please his little minorities, all this squad and this Bernie Sanders and this. He's ruining his chances. Whenever he had some chances to win election, he's just dismantled them ruthlessly. And as a result, I'm afraid that Trump, whether in jail or near jail or somewhere on the way to jail, he's going to win election just simply because Joe Biden is going to lose it. That's all what I see.
You can try to get information from polls, but it's increasingly hard because increasingly polls just measure what lunatics say, because reasonable people are like, I don't want to waste my time taking a poll. But you can see that Trump's net unfavorables during the previous election of 2020 were 8%. And after the election, when he led the J6 stuff, his net disapproval went to 18%. And then people calmed down and it started shrinking. And last year it got back up to 17. But a few months ago, it dropped back down to 8%. But in the last 2 months, his net disapproval has gone, according to aggregates of polls, where they average all of them, have gone from 8% back up to 12%, which would be good news if you don't want Trump to be president again, except Biden's net disapproval is like 17%.
And apparently Biden's in a state of disillusion over his own numbers, because you just heard me say earlier, he's saying that he doesn't necessarily believe in the numbers, even though his own experts are giving him those numbers. So he's basically saying, I don't believe those numbers even when I'm losing in 5 key states.
Just yesterday, the New York Times polls said that Biden is trailing sometimes badly in 5 of the 6 swing states. So then I read the methodology of the polls to see if there's any good news in there. And for each of the 6 states, they only polled about 600 voters. So that's it's not a huge sample. And they polled them over the phone, including, it was 90% cell phones, 10% landlines. it's hard to tell whether that methodology delivers.
I understand what you're saying, Rick, but along
I
those
don't
lines,
think polls count anymore. I don't think everyone reports in. I don't think they're honest. I just think that what's really going to be the true turning point is who's going to be putting their all into this, whether Trump is convicted or not. I don't think that's going to matter, because the American Trump supporters have proven how stupid they are, that they would put a man who's in prison before they would a man they hate. So I don't think that's going to be what turns the vote. What turns the vote is the immediate, what is occurring at that moment, because of the short brain set of the Americans, what our economy is like.
no, but it's more than the economy, because there are two other.
It can't happen too late. But whoever, if the Federal Reserve flips that switch and makes the interest rates lower at the right time, people are going to remember Biden as the person creating this, not the Federal Reserve. They're going to remember Biden. If they wait too late, they're going to give all the credit to Trump. So I think that the turning point will be the Federal Reserve and what they do and when. It has
but Kim, along those same.
idiots will put the man who's in jail into presidency.
You had something you want to add?
That high rates that the Federal Reserve keeps itself contributes to inflation. So they're fighting for, they're actually contributing to that. And this is a great contradiction. And I think they are getting in a no way out situation. They cannot raise rates because it most likely will lead to a recession. They cannot lower the rates because the inflation is still there. And today was the number of production index. It's, it was expected plus 0.3. Now it's 0.5. These are insignificant numbers, only relevant for pundits who follow these numbers from week to week, from month to month. But they're not going down either. So I don't understand what they have to really evaluate the situation with the economy, with coming election, with what people think about it, and make some adjustments to their policy. I think they should cut at least 25 basic points in their next meeting in June.
Yeah, but
You've got a group of people saying they can't do something when our country prints money without accounting for it and funds wars all over the world when we can't even fund ourselves. So I think they can do whatever they want, whenever they want. And it's a matter of manipulating the books. But I truly, truly believe that it will come down to them saying, okay, we're going to cut the interest rate so that people can, get loans at a better interest rate. And I think that that's going to happen at the right time, and that will support Biden. If it doesn't happen, then Trump will be in office. And I think it's a matter of who's going to pay off the men who run the Federal Reserve the most. Probably Trump.
I find those guys pretty independent, but I don't know. I'm not Sasha, so I don't really know. But RFK Jr., like more and more, like he's kind of a scumbag, and the more stuff that comes out about him people can't figure out whether he's going to take more votes away from Biden or for Trump. If if all this information about him, his past marriages, his affairs, his brain worm, if all that becomes like common knowledge among low information voters, then more lunatics will vote for RFK.
I hear what you're saying, everything, but Rick, just
away from Trump more than Biden.
Just really quickly, there are two other issues that are out there that I think can impact elections and everything. But I'd love to hear y'all thoughts about them, because I was going to bring up one of them yesterday, so I'm going to bring it up now. Apparently, there was a number of shootings that involved her Mother's Day, and all along, because we just had that recently, and apparently there was a Chicago shooting this weekend. As Jacoby knows, there's been a number of shootings here in Durham, including some in my own backyard, and all along those lines. And Jackson County, which is in Kansas City, legislators are choosing to introduce gun legislation and federal law shielding gun stores some places around public scrutiny, and there's even a Michigan sheriff that fought a red flag gun law, even though now he's that law. So that's one issue that I think, because there's been a rising amount of people that maybe because of the frustrations of the world, maybe they're seeing what's going on in the world, that more and more people are taking to guns as a solution to their problems. You know, if you piss at your neighbor, go shoot them and everything. Not saying that I'm suggesting that, but that's what a lot of people seem to be having, that kind of mindset and all along those lines. So definitely, I was just wondering, is this gun issue and how we handle guns going to be a major conversation point? Because you were even talking about France. So it's not
I
just
think
here.
that you answered your own question, that it's more of a mental problem than it is a guns problem. And just FYI, Chicago, I think, has daily shootings. So I don't think a Mother's Day, I don't think that any reports coming from them about shootings is anything extra than what already occurs. They just don't report it all the time. But the gun situation, I live in fear without a gun. I would prefer having a gun in my home than not here in America. Now, I stayed in Bali for a month. My doors wouldn't even close or lock, and I slept just fine. I think it's our mental state of mind, the lack of respect for human life or life in general, which was led by our leaders who say, yeah, I can do anything I want and get away with it. So I think, it's our mental state, but it's also our respect, that we lack respect, that has driven the shootings up. And I think what we need to do is focus on that, as opposed and focus on being nice again. And if so, okay, so here it is. My family's dealing with a trial coming up of someone being murdered. And it's horrific what they went through. They sat there and watched somebody they love being shot in front of them, defending them. Point blank, young people, very young people. They shouldn't even, the shooter shouldn't have had a gun. They stole it from their mom, which, whether she had it locked up properly or gave it to him, because now they're saying she had given it to him and he owned it. He didn't steal it. So they're changing the stories so that he gets a less guilty verdict, I guess. Was there at 5 a.m. with a group of people with a gun to, approach her saying, oh, we weren't there to kill her. No, you weren't there to kill her. So, I mean, we need to take a look at the mental state of mind, the fact that people are just going rampage, being rude, harassing, hostile, and getting away with it, just like Trump. And we need to fix the problem. Here's
something that surprised me. An article from last week. Mass shootings in the U.S. are down 29% this year. They're at a 3-year low.
But that's mass shootings. What I'm talking about is the kind, and that's what I was going to ask Jatovia about, because I mean, it's kind of like we become, and I don't have a gun, and maybe I need to go out and get one, but we become kind of like the OK Corral. I mean, there was just a shooting, I think it was last week and everything, where there was literally a shootout at our local bus terminal and all along those lines. And then we had the shooting here in this particular complex where they literally shot one of the guys, died after they all took themselves after the shootout to the hospital. So they literally shot and then drove themselves to the hospital, and one of them passed away at the hospital. So I'm afraid that we're becoming too much like the OK Corral.
We're numb to it. It's not,
Exactly.
Stuff is not part of the discussion in this election very much. It's abortion, it's inflation, it's whether somebody's too old or too criminal.
Just to point out about guns, it's not, we have to get away from the idea of, well, it's just a mental issue. Every country has mental issues. Only the US has the highest death rate around guns in comparison to everybody else. We come up with so many things to say guns are okay. It's actually this that's really the problem. Guns are just fine. It's actually this that's really the problem. We have a ton of guns in this country. And if we did not have a ton of guns and become so numb to, I mean, when kids were shot in a school and we did nothing afterwards, that tells you for a fact that gun culture is really gun religion, because you can't do anything to guns. And we create so many excuses, regardless what it is. As I said, Every country has mental issues. Every country has depression. Every country has all these different things. But only this country has gun deaths at the rate that it does in comparison to everybody else. So we have to realize guns are a problem. Guns are the number one killer of kids these days, yet we ignore that fact. We come up with every other excuse. We need to barricade and create schools into prisons. We need to turn schools into military institutions. No,
prisons are more secure than schools.
I don't want to hear more secure because they are secure.
Do
you realize how secure these places are? When I have to drop off my kids and go to a locked door because the doors are all locked in the school, don't tell me they need to be more secure. Don't tell me that we need cops outside because there are cops outside. Don't tell me all this because we're making more excuses for the number one killer that is in this nation. It is an epidemic that we will not touch because it is a religion. And everybody comes up with, well, we need to make more. They are secure. Well, we need to. What about hospitals?
Well, I have one comment. I can have a gun sitting here loaded, and it's not going to kill a person.
That is a dumb argument.
It will not kill a person until a person.
Do you think that when we're talking here, just to put it back to you, do you think when we're talking about gun restrictions and the problem of guns and the ease of access of guns, are you thinking that we believe that robotic guns are walking around and shooting people? That is a ridiculous argument.
I don't think robotic guns are killing people.
Ridiculous argument because
I think
it's
mental problems.
No, it's not. Are we the only country with mental problems?
I think. Well,
don't give me that.
People with mental problems will kill people with knives.
Are we the only country with mental problems? Are we the only country with mental problems?
Hold on a second, Kim, and Jatovia.
Other countries with mental problems have killed people.
Do we have more guns than everybody else? Do we have ease of access to guns in comparison to everybody else?
Well, yes. I want to address that because if you take away guns, the only people who are not going to have them,
that is a bad argument.
Are the good people.
That's anarchy.
You're going to make sure you're going to enforce.
Horrible argument.
Horrible people to have guns. No, it's not.
Let me explain to you why that's such a poor argument.
Wrong.
Let me explain to you why
honest people will turn in their guns.
That is a poor argument. Let me explain to you why that's a poor argument. Number one, let me explain to you why that's a poor argument. Because number one, are you saying that a person like that kid who I hate to bring it up, the kid that shot up Sandy Hook, was that his first time committing a crime? Yes. Did he have any priors that we could, he's going to be a criminal? No, we don't have a minority report system that's going to predict people that are going to go out and shoot people. That is a poor argument. That is saying, only criminals are going to get guns. So we got to make it access for everybody. So you're going to make it easier for criminals to get guns because you want to make it easier for everybody else to get guns. Criminals are going to get more guns. So that's falling into the poor argument that you're creating.
And you're making it so only rich people can have guns. You're taking away the poverty.
Red flag laws work. Background checks work. Actually, even
I agree with
gun insurance would work because it cuts down. It creates the gun and forces it into a tool market rather than thinking of it as a cultural. Hey, it's a toy. All these things, you've got to realize that the poorest argument that you can make is, if you take guns away from people, the only criminal, that is horrible.
But you can't argue the point that if we worked on the mental issues of this country.
No. I'm not going to argue the mental issue. You know why I'm not going to argue the mental issue? Because then you're condemning everybody with mental issues to that they are the ones who are the only people killing people. No, the domestic violence cases are where most gun violence happens.
Thank you. Violence. And you know what? Most of those are mental cases and should be locked up.
Violence.
Most of that is men with mental cases. I want to agree with one thing, though. We do need better gun control, but we need to enforce the laws better. How often is a crime committed that it's recidivism? How often?
It's a big problem. That's a big thing. But just really quickly,
with guns. Or how about people who should not have guns and they're committing a crime with guns? Recidivism is huge.
That means more guns.
huge. And if background checks were done properly, there'd be less guns handed out to the wrong people.
Because the NRA blocked block background checks on private sellers. That is the gun show loophole. That is all these entities that we are being blocked from doing. But again, the argument that comes up is the same argument that you pushed up. If you do these things, it's going to take guns away from law-abiding citizens. I hate that argument because it's a BS argument.
Yeah,
hold on a second.
I don't want to remove.
Hold on a second, Kim. Hold on a second, because Sasha had a point and then Rick had a point, and we only got about 10 minutes ago. So Sasha, you've been waiting patiently and everything. So Sasha.
Okay. What I wanted to make sure is that you understand when you're talking about mental issues in using a gun, could be. On the other hand, think about this. When there is a bank robbery, and of course, people are using guns to achieve their goal. So they have a clear, defined goal to rob the bank to get the money. And that's the end of story in itself. It's a very risky business, a lot of convictions and killings, but at least there is a kind of a name for which the risk is at least partially justified. Now, in killing kids in school, I just don't understand the motives. Okay, so you achieved your goal. You killed 10, 20, 95 kids. And what's in it for you? What was your goal initially? And to say that it's mental, in some cases, yes, but I don't think that in majority cases that's the case. So in this situation, I think it's a no-win situation. It's impossible to prevent unless you somehow eliminate the gun ownership from these people. Maybe you will hurt some other people who would like to have guns and who are not violating anything or so on. But now think about it. Let's see, you have a difference in if you forbid all guns together. So let's see, for example, 1 million guns are no longer in the hands of the population. We are talking about probably 900,000 law-abiding citizens and 100,000 criminals or would-be criminals, right? Is this equation bearable? Can you live with this, that 900,000 people will lose their right to use guns, and at the same time 100,000 people who are violent and who most likely to commit the murders will lose their rights? How in an equation, or you say, okay, hell with this 100,000, I still want to have my gun or so on. But you see, if this 100,000 will turn guns against you, even that you have a gun, you will have very little chances to resist, because before they will attack you, they will figure out where your gun is, how often you check it, and what's the easiest way to overpower you, and so on. So this gun that you cherish so much is not going to help you against 100,000.
Well, I will say this: most crimes committed make millions of mistakes while they're in action, and a lot of criminals get ahead of themselves. They're not well planned. There are a few that are, but a lot of them get ahead of themselves. They overlook planning because they're just ahead of themselves rather than in it to win it. They're just in it to do the crime. But yes, Rick.
So I just looked up a bunch of surveys on top issues for voters, and these are old surveys from 2023 and into February 2024. So, and in these surveys, guns are like between 4th and 7th most important issue for voters. It's not a big part of the discussion right now, because since these surveys, you've got Israel, you've got the Trump trial. Unless there's like some heinous, which I hope there won't be, mass shooting between now and the election, guns aren't a big part of the discussion this year.
Well, I would disagree with you.
Well, what
The
I'd like
United
to
States
do is, if we're going to take guns away from the people, why don't we stop sending them for?
But we don't take guns
war?
away from people.
Nobody
The
takes
number of
guns away.
guns
We can
in
start
America.
by not sending them to war anymore.
Right,
That,
well,
I would
yeah,
agree with that.
We have 450 million guns
Yeah.
in America. 25 years ago, we had half that number. We have 1.3 guns for every person in America.
And
That's
what I'm
guns
saying,
that
because I
you
don't-
can count that have been sold. What about the guns that people are making themselves now?
No,
Because
there's
they're-
those
they're-
guns, there's
you
people
can
that are
make your
making
own gun
guns
with
there.
3D
problem
printer.
with guns is we have too many guns. More guns.
Last
equals
year,
more death.
that person shot someone in Durham with a handmade gun. Come on.
Yeah, I mean,
Well,
more
handmade
guns
guns
equals
is-
more death.
No, handmade goods are a real issue and everything, but definitely people are doing that, and they're even doing them
Matter of fact,
in computer versions and all along those lines. But just really quickly, my concern is that, I mean, fortunately it didn't happen, because my understanding, because I was talking to the bus driver a couple of days ago, is that and how often have we heard, you say it's not an issue and everything, but how often have we heard, not just in North Carolina, but throughout the United States, about that whole notion of friendly fire? So like I said, when they literally were leaving because they were having some sort of spat, who knows, maybe it was over dates or whatever along those lines, and they were firing the guns left and right. As far as I know, nobody was hit by friendly fire, but it is quite possible that could have happened, because they were literally shooting as they were running away and everything. So that's my big concern, is that a lot of innocent lives could be lost and are being lost because of friendly fire. If you got a drive-by shooting, there's no guarantee that you're hitting your target. You might hit a baby.
Well, let's also bring up a really big concern, and that's all the officers that have been killed recently, like the ones in Charlotte 2 weeks ago, who just went to say, hey, why didn't you show up to court, and let's bring you back in. The guy brings out an automatic weapon and shoots everyone. Now, first off, he should have never had that gun to begin with. Whoever sold it to him, they should be in prison. 8 officers were shot down. 8 officers, one man still standing. 8 officers were shot down. 4 were fatally wounded. Fatally wounded, for those who don't understand that term, which I had a hard time explaining that to people in another state for some reason. Fatally wounded means they're dead. Okay, the other 4 survived, but they were still shot. 8 men shot in uniform. Now, the other question I have, why did you have marshals, detectives, and one police officer go to pick up a man if he wasn't that dangerous? So, I mean, I have an issue of the way they approach that. I also think we could be using our technology and tools a little bit better to bring in people who don't show up to court. That I think anyone who has a hearing that has been known to be a little bit violent needs to be wearing an anklet of some kind. They don't show up, you zap them down. But I think that 8 was a huge number for me. We've just had another incident in another state that, so I think this problem's growing too, and it needs to end. I think that the way we're approaching the issue is wrong. And the law enforcement is not doing their job. The enforcement of laws is not doing their job.
Well, you have it gets back to, we have way too many guns. The reason the domestic violence cases are so dangerous for officers is what? Guns. Traffic stops. The reason traffic stops are dangerous for officers, guns. The reason officers are so on edge a lot of times, guns. The reason they were shot, I mean, you have these laws that we can talk about, but they're being blocked, and we're never going to have these extra laws because they get blocked because people come up with so many excuses that they should not be enacted. And again, it's a religion. It is not a culture. It is a religion.
I think it's politics, and they've blocked the laws because that's job security. Getting people killed is job security.
Well, the NRA has been prosecuted in court for being a corrupt, fraudulent organization, and they've had to change the NRA pumps. It's when you have an unpopular position, which is do nothing about guns. That position is only supported by massive contributions to politicians.
Yep. And that's how.
I know this is almost time to wrap up, because I know Sasha's got Ukraine, Russia, and China coming up very shortly and everything. As a matter of fact, Johnson's waiting for him in the other space and all along those lines. But definitely, I know they'll be having a conversation
Thank
about
you.
your favorite topic, which is Ukraine and Russia and this continuing war and all along those lines. So they'll be doing that from 11 to about 11:45 or however long they feel like going and all along those lines. So Sasha, it's about time for us to go over there. I know Jonathan's over there. I have not seen Ivan and all along those lines, but we're going to head on out of here. We've had some more conversations and we have some guests coming up. Who knows? Maybe we'll have some conversation around Steve and Mr. Chambers and his visit with Mr. Chambers. And I know that in 2 weeks, we'll be having a conversation on prostate cancer because we've got a tournament here that'll be dealing with that issue. That's a national traveling tournament. And I just talked to the founders of that tournament because it's been going on for 26 years. And they'll be coming to us on the 27th and all along those lines. So that should be a fun and interesting conversation. But right now, let's get ready to get on out of here. We'll start with Sasha very shortly.
Thank you.